All right, well, I'm really excited to be sharing space with folks from the Trust for Public Lands. I'm going to have Heather Rain come up here and introduce our section. So welcome, Heather Rain.
Hi, everyone, and to those of you that I saw previously, and for those of us that we are coming straight from a nice tour of the Cushby Triangle. Thanks to having in the community, learning a little bit more about the environment up here, and we can say that our outfits and hair are from the Northeast Styling Salon. So we definitely pontoon this morning. I just want to say thanks again for your openness and hospitality in bringing us up here. Trust for Public Land is operating across the North Woods of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and throughout the whole state of Minnesota, in addition to the connectivity we have to the Midwest. So I'm in the state director of philanthropy for Minnesota, but I'm also the Midwest director of philanthropy, which includes down to Chicago, Indiana, louder, Chicago, Indiana, over to Ohio. Sorry, this thing just keeps moving down. Which is really nice. It allows us to take an approach where we can look at a Great Lakes approach. We can look at rivershed approaches. It's just really wonderful. But I am not the reason we are here today. I am going to introduce my colleague. We have a brand new state director, Sophie Forhoff, and she has come to us most recently from New Orleans. However, she is a Minnesotan. She's back after 11 years, and she started about 2 months ago after our director of 22 years retired. So we are really happy to have had a wonderful handoff between the two of them. Susan is still active in what we're doing, and to turn over the reins to Sophie, who's going to tell you a little bit more about how Trust for Public Land works and how we work within the conservation ecosystem. It's sort of a unique story. So thank you so much for coming.
Well, good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you so much for your hospitality and your welcome. And there are some folks here that we got to meet last night at a really beautiful happy hour. So thank you for people who are going to bear with us a little bit to hear some of the same information, but also, you know, with some photos and a whole lot more here. Our folks, can I just say, will you raise your hand if you're familiar with Trust for Public Land? Yeah, so a lot of familiarity, a lot of new people. Heather shared a little bit about us, but you know, we are a national nonprofit. And while I am just 2 months into being a staff member of Trust for Public Land, I've been a long admirer of the organization, because in the 10 years I spent in New Orleans, they were some of our closest partners on a key initiative that I led in New Orleans to turn a vacant rail corridor post Katrina into New Orleans main greenway and green space right in the heart of the city. And so, you know, Trust Public Land is really the premier organization working nationwide to build a movement outdoors to connect everyone to the benefits of nature that spans from the pristine and spectacular nature that that we've gotten to tour today on these pontoons and on our hike, to the really important urban parks that are critical for community health and well-being. And so, you know, our work in the Minnesota the North Woods office is to really bring that national talent, that national expertise to bear on the needs and priorities of communities across Minnesota and across the North Woods. So we believe that access to the outdoors is a fundamental human need. Do you think it's a fundamental human need? I have a feeling this is a warm crowd for this. Really, so we are celebrating Trust Public Land's 50th anniversary this year. And we're really some of the pioneering leaders nationally in spreading this movement, in driving conservation and environmental movement. And, you know, I know you've lived this, you experienced this, you know, access to outdoors, it goes far beyond, you know, just enjoying nature, right? It is fundamental for our health and well-being. You know, Trust Public Land does the leading national research identifying and ranking the 100 top park systems in the country. We just rolled that out this year for the folks that spend some time down in the Twin Cities. You know, St. Paul ranked #2 and Minneapolis #3. These are really exceptional park systems, large park systems in the country. And we see that when there's more access to parks, more access to outdoors, people are happier, right? Equity, we're working to make sure that everyone lives within a 10-minute walk of for a green space. Advancing climate, we are confronting climate change, and it is in these outdoor spaces that's our opportunity to really live in harmony with nature, to also find nature-based solutions to the issues that are really confronting our communities. And really all of this starts and begins with really community-driven work. So I spent the last 10 years leading a very small nonprofit organization and really being deeply rooted. And so I'm looking out at this group of community-rooted people. It is the community work that makes this possible. And we're the national organization that comes and partners with communities to really uplift what is most needed, to bring resources, to bring best practices, to bring data. Although the more that we learn about the work we're doing, there is so much capability for that here. And so we work in a variety of ways. Our initiatives span from land protection, which we're really lucky to have Will Cooksey here, who's going to do most of the speaking about the work we're doing here. So land protection work across the North Woods. We build trails. These are both rural trails and also urban projects. Park development and schoolyards. This is an initiative we're particularly excited about. The work that we have been leading a large part in the Northeast has been some of our most iconic schoolyards projects, but we are increasingly growing this work in Minnesota, starting near the Twin Cities, but we're eager to work all across the state. And over those 50 years, we've had a huge amount of impact nationally, right? So we've done over 5,000 projects, driven $93 billion in public funding, and 4 million acres, protecting 4 million acres of public land. Here in Minnesota, something that we've been talking that we're really excited about coming out of the spring's legislative session is, we do a lot of work bringing private resources to really drive public support, right? Turning voters into donors and conservationists to protect these and critical lands. And we just had a lot of success this spring with the reauthorization of the Environmental and Natural Resources Trust Fund, which is the lottery funding that makes a lot of these projects possible. It will be on your ballot next fall, and this will drive $2.7 billion in funding for the continuation of these really important projects. So, you guys all know that it's everything from that federal, state, local level, and to the projects. And so our Minnesota programs, this is a little map showing the work. And again, Will's going to dive into the land protection work, but we do community powered parks. And these tend to be more the urban projects, but it doesn't have to be big city urban, it can be smaller communities as well. And then we do work across it. Will's going to dive into this. So just a little bit on the community parks and schoolyards. Our goal again is that everyone lives within a 10-minute walk of a high quality park. We know that based on your background, based on your income, based on your race, people have very different experiences in terms of what the quality of the parks are and how much access. So we're really trying to close that gap, to acquire land, to work with communities, to make the changes they really want to see in their neighborhoods. We've had some incredibly successful projects. Again, these are we haven't turned these around in the 2 months since I've been here, but I've gotten to tour them, and they are some incredible spaces that I think many of you have probably visited. Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary. This is an organization that has a lot of capability in real estate transactions. So acquiring these properties and working with cities to develop them into thriving green spaces. Frogtown Park and Farm, and they vary in terms of what they look like. Some are more nature-based, some are more active playground and recreation spaces. Midway Peace Park. This was an incredibly successful recent project that was in the Midway neighborhood of St. Paul. Low-income communities that really lacked any access to a high-quality park. We acquired property that was a parking lot and turned it into a really beautiful park space. And what's ahead? I touched on this just a little bit, but we are really bringing that schoolyards work that has been a national model and increasingly a national movement to Minnesota. And so we're just in our first pilot stage doing the first handful of these. But we have schoolyards across the state that are underperforming that look like this, you know, they might have a lot of hardscape, a playground that's in really poor condition. Maybe you have one of these in your neighborhoods, you know. And these are opportunities to really create high quality spaces to generate a love of the outdoors, to generate a love of nature, to live in harmony with nature. So we work with students. They learn about nature-based solutions. They design their schoolyards, we build them, and then we open the schoolyard up to the community outside school. So really creating these places where they're needed most. And now I'm going to hand it over to Will Cooksey, who has been with the organization for 7 years, who leads our Northwoods program, and who knows all about the work that is happening. Thank you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. What a pleasure to be able to speak with all of you. What an honor, what a privilege. So again, Will Cooksey, I'm a senior project manager with the Trust for Public Land. I've been with the organization for 7 years, as Sophie mentioned, and it is truly I feel remarkably lucky to be able to do what I do day in and day out, and hope to have continued success for a very long time. And so what do I do? What do we do out of the Minnesota office and through the Forever Northwoods program? We work to ensure forested, water-rich lands of the Northwoods are protected for water quality, for habitat, for climate change, for public health, and for all of us to forever experience the magic, the beauty that is our Northwoods. I know for me, growing up and being able to utilize public outdoor spaces was extraordinarily influential in my personal development, and being able to bond with my dad, you know, trout fishing on rivers and streams, on taking long canoe trips with college friends in college. And now as a father to 2 young children, a 2 and a 4-year-old, and being able to re-experience those first, you know, moments, those first experiences on public land and seeing that magic. And I'm sure all of you have similar experiences with land, and know how important it can be to our psyches, to our souls, to our well-beings. And so we bring that TPL, we bring that passion for public land. We bring that passion for wildlife and for water quality, and having wilderness as well as close to home access. And we apply various expertise to that passion to be able to create some really amazing outcomes that I want to share with you today. So the Forever Northwoods program slide is a little bit, it's better on the laptop there. But anyway, you get the picture. So we've been active in this geography, permanently protecting you know, hundreds of thousands of acres for decades. So each little dot that you may be able to see on this map represents an individual project where TPL has applied its expertise, which I'll go into in more detail in just a little bit, to protect a place that's important to the community there. And so some of these places I want to dig into, and particularly those that are most perhaps recognizable to this, you know, this geography. Jim Brandenburg's Bush Camp. This is Judd Lake, not too far from here. TPL, which it takes a very entrepreneurial, takes a very pragmatic approach to land protection, achieved a permanent conservation outcome for this iconic place where Jim Brandenburg captured, you know, many of his most notable images of wolves.
publicly accessible?
That is public. It,
I can ask you to come in from disappointment. Yeah.
what, my understanding of it, the management of that property does allow for limited public use and enjoyment akin to a scientific and natural area.
Tough to get in
Another property on the North Shore where, TPL played a extraordinary, supportive role, to activate, Harbor Park, what's now is Harbor Park and North House, Folk School. Which I hope many of you, have visited. It's a remarkable place.
That boat is for hire, by the way, answered. Now, if they're Bobville owns it and takes people out. The lake, the flowers.
Fantastic. Another property that we recently protected is Deep Lake in Hubbard County. That is now owned by the county. The county was extraordinarily excited to be able to receive TPL's assistance to receive that property. And it is a county park and in the process of being fully activated and managed to include amenities like camping and mountain biking and hiking. It has a spur trail into the North Country National Scenic Trail. Sturgeon River Gorge in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. As I mentioned, the Northwoods Forever Northwoods program spans 3 states: Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and we have an extraordinary legacy of land protection in each of these 3 states. And this is one of the exemplary projects that we've done in our history there. And perhaps the origination of the Forever Northwoods program can go back to Forest Lodge, which is in the Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest, just outside of Cable, Wisconsin, in the Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest. And that is where we were able to lend our expertise to protect approximately 870-ish acres on the lake, on the lake there, Nemacolin Lake, and along with many buildings and a wonderful boathouse. And that property today is open to the public for tours and is being activated with programming by Northland College. And I'll take a moment and say that is another component of our expertise is finding creative ways to partner with community organizations, with organizations that have their own independent strength to be able to achieve outcomes that benefit all of us. And so what's ahead? This slide was created maybe in April, because in May we had a banner series of closings, and we were able to convey 2,000 acres in Bayfield County, Wisconsin, to the county of Bayfield. The property is extraordinary wolf habitat for the Echo wolf pack, and includes the headwaters of the Sand River, a designated trout stream, along with 17 miles of river and tributary, and it's just an extraordinary addition to the county forest there. Moving over into the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, earlier this year we conveyed a roughly 1,240 acre property to the Ottawa National Forest that included a segment of a well-utilized segment of the North Country National Scenic Trail. Now that that segment of trail is permanently protected and can continue to be used and enjoyed by by campers and other trail users. A current project, and I've mentioned the North Country National Scenic Trail a couple of times. One of our initiatives is trail protection. And, we have the Superior Hiking Trail in this geography, which is, ultimately a part of the North Country Trail. And we currently have in our portfolio a series of projects that, when completed, will permanently protect approximately 60 miles of trail that we're really excited to be able to work on and hopefully achieve that outcome. And this is situations where the trail and the North Country Trail, unlike say the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, has lots of opportunities where the trail may be currently routed along asphalt. And as we all know, if you want to go for a nature hike, walking along asphalt is not all that enjoyable. And so there are numerous opportunities that we're targeting where by protecting a parcel of land, you create an opportunity to reroute trail from on the road to through the woods. And we have roughly 3 or 4 projects right now in our portfolio that will result in 60 miles of permanent protection of this trail. So in Minnesota, in addition to our work in the Northwoods, we have a separate program which results in similar outcomes, which is the protection of at-risk privately owned property that's of high priority to the public and getting that property into public ownership or public use. And our other program is Minnesota Rivers, which we're looking to focus on some of the key rivers in Minnesota and protect that shoreline and protect really critical parcels for water quality benefits, for habitat, for recreation. And so these, if you can see the map at the bottom, those are the watersheds that we're most active in through this program. It includes the Mississippi headwaters, so the first 400 miles of the Mississippi River. It includes the St. Croix watershed, the metro area, the Cannon River, which is in very close proximity to the Twin Cities, and then down into the southeast blufflands of Minnesota. And so we have, in addition to me, our Minnesota office has the expertise and the capacity of 2, soon to be 3 other project managers with that perform similar land protection work. I'm most active in this Mississippi Headwaters Habitat Corridor project, but we have other staff that focus on other parts of the state. And through this program, we enjoy a partnership with the Mississippi Headwaters Board, with Bowser, the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources, and we receive our primary bulk of funding from the Outdoor Heritage Fund, but with all of our work, private and foundation support, allows us really to do the work that we do and achieve the extraordinary outcomes that we achieve, which is on an annual basis, protecting on average $10 to $15 million in real estate. So this is some examples of the properties we've protected along the Mississippi and in this key watershed area. And I won't, we've completed 31 projects, protected nearly 14,000 acres. And each one of these has a story to tell. But I hope it demonstrates the track record that TPL has established, over the 50 years that we've been doing this work. One of the, so my supervisor, Bob McGillivray, who's been with the organization for over 20 years, one of his proudest accomplishments is the protection of the LaSalle Lake State Recreation Area, which is LaSalle Lake is one of Minnesota's deepest natural lakes, and now it's a place that we can all go and enjoy, and our grandchildren and their children can go and enjoy. Other area projects that I did not mention, but the TPO played a key supporting role. Chainsaw Sisters, the Fall Lake. There were 2 phases where we protected some key shoreline. Burnside Lake projects include Long Island, Gusty Island, Gull Island, and then Bernberg corridor. There was a project, two phases. So just in this kind of area, very beautiful area of the Northwoods, we've completed permanent protection of 20,000 acres over 47 projects. And so quickly, how TPL works, the nuts and bolts that we apply to our real estate work, our land protection work. We are contacted or become aware of a parcel of land through a variety of ways. It could be any one of you saying, I see a listing, or I've known about this parcel for a long time, and or I would like to achieve a conservation outcome on my property, or a public agency contacts us and says, hey, we need some help. This is important property to us. Or through our planning processes, we've identified it as being important to achieve a conservation outcome. And then that once in a generation moment occurs where the land becomes available for purchase. We enter into contract with the owner to acquire the property, and then we perform the requisite due diligence, including appraisal review, oftentimes a boundary survey, a phase 1 environmental site assessment. We do title investigation. We partner with the local community to garner support. We engage the local government and obtain their support. We help work with the public agency to craft a management plan for the property. And we work with the public agency to develop a method whereby we will convey the property to the public agency. And then perhaps most importantly is we assemble the capital that's necessary to complete the transaction, which the biggest item there is acquisition capital. And one of our expertise is fitting, especially available sources of public funding to particular parcel, and finding a way to assemble that acquisition capital. We have a robust team in Washington, DC that helps us lobby and maintain relationships with the decision makers there, and then on down the chain, so to speak. So if I didn't mention this before, the Trust for Public Land is unique among land trusts. We are an accredited land trust, but we're unique in the sense that when we start working on property, it's never with the intention of being the permanent owner or the permanent steward of that property. It's always to get that property into the hands almost always of a public agency, and then we apply our expertise to the next transaction. So I think that concludes my comments. Take questions, or Sophie or Heather, did you have any?
We can just we want to make this open for the community and informal, that you can really ask us questions. We can ask you questions as we have follow-ups, but just another note, I did have to step out, but I think that one thing that we can all note that's coming up is, of course, the reauthorization of lottery proceeds for the Environmental Natural Resources Trust Fund, which you guys may have already hit on. But this really can't be underestimated in terms of the amount of funding. It's unprecedented in Minnesota history. And it did make it to the ballot for 2024, so we're very happy. We all know that no matter what our projects are, we can do a lot more with a couple $2 billion under our belt than what we scrape together from our couch cushions. So I'm gonna let us facilitate. You can ask any one of us questions, but while I do that, I'm just gonna set some folders down, but I don't want anybody to have folder guilt. So if you want to take one, by all means do. If you don't, I'll just pick them up afterwards. Any questions?
Would be willing to verbalize your question in the microphone, that would be ideal, and I'll bring it to you if you raise your hand. Mr. Dayton.
I really like what you guys, you're terrific. And E.O. Wilson wrote a book, probably his last one, called Half Earth. And it's about trying to set aside half the earth from development that would harm species. The purpose of doing it isn't necessarily for people, which I think seems to be one of the major things you're doing, but is to preserve species. And habitat is disappearing, so the species are disappearing. I wonder if you're connected with, there is a movement called Half Earth. I think the Biden administration came out with a policy saying we should set aside about a third of the land for conservation. I wonder if you're looking at land with the purpose of species preservation aside from, recreation for people.
Well, trust for public land. Our motto used to be land for people, and I think that part of the reason for that is that has been a really key way to really mobilize public support for this work, right? And we know that spaces like this serve many purposes, and like principle among them is that it's a very important habitat. So we work in close collaboration with many different partner organizations, many of whom are really focused on that wildlife protection. And we're filling sort of a unique space, which is particularly conservation in urban and rural areas that is critical for both habitat, climate, and also for community recreation. So, I think that these spaces certainly do many things. It's not the core focus of what Just Public Land does, but we're holding hands with those partners, right?
First, that often you would be occasionally taking land out of the tax base. Is that often a problem?
Whatever. I mean, it can be perceived as a problem, absolutely. Local governments absolutely need to have budgets that make sense. And in many instances, in the event land goes from private ownership to public ownership, there's a recognition that there's no longer property taxes being paid, and in lieu of that, there's a payment in lieu of taxes, a tilt payment. With the policy behind that being a recognition that these local governments need to be made whole or kept whole.
Is that done on an ongoing basis then?
Yes,
It's a one shot.
it's annual payment. And the exact mechanism for the tilt payment, what will it be, is very case by case dependent. But there's certainly policies and mechanisms in place to try to keep local governments whole.
First, a brief comment on the question on payment in lieu of taxes. Pat and I live in Riding Township in Sudan. When they created Vermillion State Park, we lost that tax base, but we got Pilt. I just asked our township board about it. We're getting more in Pilt than we got in taxes. But that's just an individual case. The way it sounds, every case is different. But our little township benefited. And my question was, I heard very brief mention of the Bushway Triangle. Is there any information on that at this time, or is that a work in progress?
Yeah, there was an introduction of the area to TPL today, and it was a real privilege to go out and see the property. And I think it's certainly something that we'll take back with us under consideration and explore ways to potentially play a role in protection of that important area.
I bumped into a few management plans that reading them, it says if you get this management plan and you get financial assistance for doing the land management work, that you can't enter it in a conservation easement. Have you come across that at all?
So to repeat the question, so if a private landowner receives public funding in order to perform some type of work on their property, and they're precluded from entering the property into a conservation easement in the future. I have not heard about that. But I don't know. I'm thinking what could possibly be. I mean, there's different programs that landowners can enter their property into. And so maybe, you know, in Minnesota, it's called SFIA, Sustainable Forest Incentive Act. And those are, you can enter your land in for a period of years ranging, I think, from 8 to 50. And so I'm wondering if maybe while you have your land enrolled, you're precluded from further encumbering the property with the conservation easement. I don't know. I'm speculating, but to answer your question, I haven't heard about that.
Do you want to talk about books in our rivers program, conservation?
Yeah, so Sophie was mentioning in our rivers work, especially, we take a programmatic, a partnership approach to the work where in most cases the Trust for Public Land takes the role of fee title acquisition partner, and we might partner with an organization like I mentioned, Bowser, or it could be other conservation organizations. And they may take a conservation easement approach, and then we might have a third partner that takes, in the instance with the Mississippi Headwaters, it's the Mississippi Headwaters Board, and they take more of a administrative or role. And we leverage those three, skill sets to be able to provide a comprehensive suite of potential conservation outcomes to a landowner. So that they could ultimately sell the property, which would then go into public ownership, or they could retain ownership but convey a conservation easement that would restrict certain uses and ultimately keep the land natural. And conservation easements are also something that TPL does and has done in this geography. And oftentimes the owner of that conservation easement would be like someone like the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources or something like.
Hi, thanks for coming today. I had a question sort of about a policy initiative, BLM lands. There's sort of a public comment period. I believe it's still open, not positive, whereby there's a potential to do long-term leases of BLM land for recreational purposes rather than just extractive purposes. And I'm wondering if TPL has been involved in that and how that complements some of your strategies and how that might come into play out in areas like this.
I'm not aware of that particular policy.
we're talking about Lives Matter land or,
No,
yeah,
no,
sorry, I
Bureau
was
of-
like.
Bureau of Land Management. Bureau of Land Management.
That, but we do have an initiative there, so I can't answer on the Bureau of Land Management, I'm sorry. So, yeah, I should have been, I'm
Yeah.
learning my acronyms, I'm coming up
So-
with me.
I would say in many instances, particularly with our rivers work that utilizes state funding. When we acquire a property, and before we convey it to, in that instance, either the county or the DNR, we place effectively a deed restriction on the property that says, that it must be managed primarily for the benefit of wildlife, of habitat. And so then that in a way, ensures that this land will be managed in a certain way, moving forward and, I don't know, I couldn't tell from your question whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, but this deed restriction would, or similar mechanism would preclude, this conversation from happening, for example, with the BLM lands about how they're managed or whether the management plan should change.
The conservation easements. I think that, if you donate, if you grant a conservation easement to TPL or another organization, you get a tax deduction for the value of that, for the reduced value of your land, the amount that has been reduced by the conservation easement. But you don't get a lower property tax in your annual property tax. And the legislature changed that a few years ago to remove that deduction. And it seems to me when the Republicans were in charge, is there any effort to change that back again so that you would be taxed on the actual value of the land, not the commercial value before you put the commercial conservation easement?
I'm not aware of TPL having any, direct involvement with lobbying for such a policy. But I can understand the frustration that a landowner could have, in that situation.
It's certainly something that, that's what we're here for, is to hear from you about, it's not that people don't know and trust their public land or people aren't working on things, but how do we decide what bubbles to the top? How do we decide what policy initiatives we follow? What, how are we going to bring to bear all of the, I would say just the expertise as well as the that we have nationally. So the example would be this year, our policy initiatives are the ENRTF, so the reauthorization of lottery funds, along with a feasibility study for Washington County that's doing major public land movement. When we learn about these other things, or when you reach out to us, that's something we can discuss further also with our advisory board members and with our policy, which is our government affairs committee. We try to keep on top of these things, and then also to know what partners are working on things, because sometimes it's in need of a coalition and sometimes it's best with another organization. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I will certainly bring it to the attention of our government affairs.
I'd just like to add to the answer about the BLM question. That is called the conservation rule. It's a very important proposal. The conservation rule puts conservation on the level of forestry, grazing, mining, oil and gas extraction. Those are all the multiple uses of BLM. Conservation was not one of them, and it is now, thanks to President Biden's administration. The next few days are the last few days for comments. I would like to add that some of the industries have not been as supportive as they should have been, like the solar industry, because they're an industry on BLM lands and they're a little concerned about conservation rules, and we all need to speak up. My question I have to you is just about Ely. What is your activities here in Ely? Especially since you put up Fernberg 1 and Fernberg 2. What are those Fernberg 1 and Fernberg 2? And what else do you have up your sleeve here in Ely? And I might add that I used to have a beer at the Chainsaw Sisters Blue, and I'm a local. And I was there when the Truckee Public Land took it over. I was hoping to get the beautiful Norway pine bar. I don't know what you did with it, but I really missed it. So thank you.
So, yeah, TPL played a critical role in providing or continuing public access to, the boundary waters at Chainsaw Sister Saloon. You know, that project, as well as the Fernburg Corridor 1 and 2, you know, occurred, you know, well in advance of me coming to TPL, so I'm not as intimately familiar with the transaction details on those projects. Forgot the. What's going on in Ely? So to be perfectly, you know, candid, we, particularly as we worked on a series of finding conservation outcomes for a series of islands on Burnside Lake. You know, the Long Island, we were especially proud to be able to convey that to the Superior National Forest. Gull Island, you know, is now in a scientific and natural area. And Gusty Island, we, you know, the conservation outcome that we achieved there was, which we feel, you know, we're extraordinarily grateful, was to convey conservation easement to the Minnesota Land Trust. And then the restricted fee is now owned by Listening Point Foundation and is being activated by that wonderful organization to be able to implement into their curriculum. But I go through that series to just say that you know, the taking, you know, public land is a sensitive issue, and taking land off of tax rolls is a sensitive issue, and it's one that you know, we've chosen to focus our energies and our efforts in other geographies. That said, we're always you know, we're always open to exploring new possibilities. I think that a common sentiment is, well, we've got a wealth of public land, we don't need any more. But the reality is that our patchwork or our network of public lands wasn't necessarily created in an intentional or a planful manner. And so I think we can all agree that there are some really important parcels, really important pieces of land that maybe are privately owned, but maybe they shouldn't be. And I think I think certain parcels, aside from what is the private public land ownership, certain parcels, you know, should be open to the public. They have resources that are you know, important for all of us to be able to protect and continue to enjoy. So to conclude, we don't have any, you know, right now we don't have any active projects in Ely. I have an early stage project on the North Shore, but I'm, you know, our office is always open to exploring new opportunities.
Thank you for your presentation and your great work. I wanted to make one comment, sort of building off of what you just said, Will, and that's one thing that all of us can do in this room. And that is to encourage our elected officials to support public land acquisitions. So oftentimes, whether it's property that would go into state ownership or federal ownership, the governments look to our local township commissioners. They look to our local county boards. And if our county boards say thumbs down to a land exchange that will put the property into public ownership, it's very hard to achieve that goal, no matter what the merits of the argument are. So each of us can play an important role by talking to our township supervisors who next Gusty Island, who can talk to some of our county commissioners next other projects and get them to understand the importance of TPL's work and public ownership of very special parts of land.
Thank you.
We'll do this as our last question for the day.
I'm not sure I understood entirely, but you mentioned North Country Trail, which is probably one of the most current developments in this area of making the connection from the Fernberg or the Tekakovic Trail across this area of Ely and Tower and Sedan. And so I'm not exactly sure how your activities were connected to the North Country Trail, but I'm wondering if are they predominantly acquisition of locations of land that's not in public ownership that could be contributed to the trail as opposed to some kind of assistance with land that's already national forest land or city land or publicly owned lands that that need to be added to the system possibly.
Yeah, so sorry for any confusion there. So as we all know, the North Country Trail is the, the longest national scenic trail in our catalog of scenic trails, and ranging from the Dakotas to the East Coast. And specifically the parcels, the projects that I'm working on are in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and in Wisconsin. And so while we have TPL has protected key segments of the North Country Trail that are now in public ownership, I don't have any projects. We don't have any projects in our portfolio currently that would protect segments of the North Country Trail in Minnesota. Although we have just recently protected some key parcels that have spur trails to the North Country Trail, and would provide hikers kind of opportunity to get off the trail there, but nothing in Minnesota. So does that clarify?
Yes, my question is whether or not there was efforts in Minnesota to apply for it. If there were efforts to apply for it, what would somebody be looking at? Would they be looking at segments that aren't publicly owned predominantly? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be a key, or kind of our bread and butter from a land acquisition perspective. It's here's a key segment, or if this land were acquired, then the trail could be rerouted from the road to natural, or this portion of trail is not connected because it dead ends. Getting this parcel in permanent protection would be the catalyst for not only construction of this trail, but also for miles of trail through maybe existing public land. But yeah, those are types of projects that I love to do and would welcome the opportunity to take a look at if you have something in mind.
If I can, Lacey, just really quickly, as we just round up, we will be here outside. There's some more information and we're here to talk to you. But obviously my job is the most fun job, which is I am the philanthropy director. I just want to let you know a few things. I'm not here to just make a hard sell or talk to you, but I want to talk to you about one of the things that Trust for Public Land can do. Because of our funding coming through, we have about a $1 in private funds to $2,000 in public funds ratio. So you can feel really powerful. And I think that's meaningful for those of us that aren't Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg or about to enter into a cage match with Elon Musk. For those of us that can't do that, you can come forward, and when you make a gift, let's say Giving Tuesday, when you make a legacy gift, or if you were to help with, for instance, the Northwoods Land Protection Fund, which is a fund that allows when it's time, when there's not money in the bag, but we've got, sir, if we found something that was really excellent in the North Country Trail and it's currently not in public and we need to move, if we're taking on a project like that and we think we can do it, we've also got to go to TPL and say, where's the money? Because we don't know how fast we can turn it around. And so that land protection fund allows us that flexibility up to a certain percentage, but it's also invested. So sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. Right now, we're hoping it's getting better. But those are the kinds of things, gifts and meaningful things you can do in addition to engaging with your policy people, with your legislators, with the local government to move forward as a group. What, we might not be able to do alone. So if you have questions about it, I'm here to talk, and don't worry, it's, I'm really here to talk and hear what you want to do, what is important to you, what is meaningful for you, and we can answer any questions about it. But thank you all so much, and thank you for sharing this beautiful landscape with us.